Hey everybody, welcome back to The Loop. I'm so glad you've chosen to join us today. Unfortunately, today I need to start with some bad news. Today is going to be the very last day that we ever record an episode of The Loop. April Fool's Day, suckers. Today we are actually concluding our study in the book of Judges, and I want to take you to a really disturbing story toward the end of the book. Judges chapter 19, verse 1 begins by reminding us that in those days Israel had no king. And because they had no king, everyone was free to do what was right in their own eyes. Again, this is the theme of the whole book, but in Judges 19, we see just how far the people of God have deteriorated from doing what they think is right rather than doing what God says is right. One of God's people, a man, he was traveling with his concubine, which is kind of like a female slave. As they're traveling, it gets late in the day, and when it's almost dark, they start talking about where they're going to spend the night. They talk about maybe staying in the city where the Jebusites live, but at the last minute, they decide it would be safer to push on to a city where the Israelites live. They believed those are God's people, and so we'll be safe in their city. They arrived in the city. Someone in the city sees them in the city square, and they offer to take them in for the night. They want to give them a place to stay and maybe even some food to eat. But in verse 22, we're told that some of the wicked men in that city surrounded the house. They pounded on the door and they demanded, "Bring out the man who came to your house so that we can have sex with him." The owner of the house said, "Do not do such a vile or disgusting thing to this guest in my home." When the wicked men of the city insisted, the owner of the home grabbed the concubine and his own daughter. He threw them outside and he told the men of the city to have their way with these women. And then he locked the door and stayed inside all night while these two women were raped and abused. The next morning, the man, the guest in this city where God's people lived, he got up and he found his concubine laying dead just outside the front door. He picked up her body, he put her on a donkey, he carried her all the way home, and then he cut her body into 12 different parts. He then sent a different body part to each of the 12 tribes of Israel as a kind of wake-up call to the nation to help them see who they had become. The chapter ends with these words, "We must do something, so speak up." The nation had become incredibly corrupt. Can I tell you, there are a lot of things that are going on in this world that are just as corrupt today. And the only thing that's needed for evil to take over in our world is for good men to sit by and do nothing. We don't need to be aggressive about the wrong things that are going on in our world, but we do need to be assertive about it. If we don't, it's alarming to see what kind of people we can actually become.